In this episode, I'm interviewing Jasmine DiLucci. Jasmine is an attorney, a CPA, an enroll agent, and when you mix all those things together is what you get, a tax attorney. And we're going to discuss her path into becoming a tax attorney. And we're also going to talk about her YouTube channel, which has been blowing up lately. By the time we're recording this, is almost 100,000 subscribers. I'm pretty sure by the time we published, it will go past 100,000, and she will have the little plaque, the little silver plaque that YouTube sends to YouTubers when they reach 100,000. So first of all, Jasmine, thank you very much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So I wanted to ask you, the first question is, what made you become a lawyer? I know you've had experience with tax. You worked one of the big four firms. You're an enrolled agent, which is the official IRS. I don't want to call it certification because that would be the wrong word to use, but it's the designation that allows you to represent taxpayers in front of the IRS. And then you also became a CPA. So you obviously have a wealth of knowledge educationally and also with your experience in tax. Why did you feel you had to go to the next thing?
I mean, the reality is I kind of decided like way early, right? It wasn't something where I became an enrolled agent, then was like, oh, I want to be a CPA. It was honestly like my parents were both in tax. And so I quite literally started thinking about tax like in fifth grade. And then especially by eighth grade, I was like, okay, I definitely want to do this. So that's actually, and like why I even took the enrolled agent exam in high school, like starting then, was because my dad was actually taking it and practicing, and my mom was a CPA. So that's what happened. I mean, honestly, I knew I was going to law school even when I worked a couple of years before going to law school.
So you come from a family of tax people, and
Yeah.
you currently work. I saw in your profile on your website that because you have a tax firm, you have a law firm, which actually focuses on tax. And I would love to know the difference between the two. But I saw that in one of these firms you work with your dad. So what is that like?
It's fun. I like it. Yeah, so I work with him on the CPA firm, and it's really good. I mean, I think we've had like our growing pains, when you first join. So it was really early on when I first joined. That is when it was, he still thought, okay, I'm running the show. Jasmine has no clue what's going on. And I was struggling, being like, no, you're doing all these things wrong. I really want to change this and this and this. But over time now, I mean, he's loved, just like he's let go of the reins. He just does what I tell him to do. And at this point, it's like a very easy relationship.
I love that. You're the boss now. I love that. Hopefully he doesn't hear this.
Yeah.
So actually, I work with family too. I've worked with my wife for the last 15 years. She's a bit more hands off now because she's more involved with kids' activities and that sort of thing. And I am a bit more detached from my day to day in my accounting firm. I'm focusing more on the YouTube, the content, the educational stuff. Let me ask you a question. What drove you to starting a YouTube channel? And I know your YouTube channel has changed in terms of what the content was and what the content is. That pivot was very good, and we'll talk about that. But what drove you to start creating content in YouTube?
Honestly, I was doing all the sales for my firm at the time. And I honestly, it was like I would have the same conversation so many different times that I I was like, I should just record this because there's so many people that honestly I can't help because paying our fees would put them in a worse situation. But a lot of times what I would do actually isn't that difficult, right? Things like you think about checking your transcripts, is the return filed? Is there a penalty? So a lot of basic stuff that if they just had like a little bit of knowledge, they would be in a way better position. And instead, what ends up happening is I would also see myself, okay, well, I don't want to take the case and put them worse off, and then actually see them go to somebody else. And that person's more than comfortable taking the case and putting them worse off and promising things they can't do for them. And so that's where I just started being like, if I can just explain this stuff to people, I think they would be better off because we honestly had too much business at the time when I started it. So it wasn't a marketing effort. And then I did grow progressively more frustrated with seeing what I would consider really bad tax advice online.
Yeah, no, yeah. So let's discuss that. So you said it didn't start. You said it didn't start as a marketing thing, but now you realize what a monster, powerful marketing tool sharing your knowledge in YouTube has been. Has that changed your business at all? Your approach, the type of clients you get?
Yeah, so it has, I mean, it has been very powerful marketing wise. So when I started, even when I had very few followers, it did bring in business. I just didn't think I realized it at the time because I wasn't tracking where they were coming in from. But now, I mean, it's clear, like they're all coming in basically from YouTube, from Instagram. And um, it does make me feel like my firm's a little bit indestructible, which is nice. So initially you're more like, I'm in a position today where I just say no to business that I feel like I can't best serve, even if I can do it, but I'm not maybe the best person to do it, or we're not in the best position to do it. I just feel more comfortable saying no. So I like that because I think that puts the people coming to me also in a better position. Um, but otherwise, I mean, it's just fun. I enjoy it. It's like one of the things that even my current clients will watch stuff. I'll have more resources for them. A lot of the videos also help them as well. Because as you know, I mean, just being a CPA attorney, like practicing a lot of times our time is really limited. So I started seeing a lot of value in all of the things I can record and then still reach all of my clients, all of my potential clients, and not have to be having the same conversation one-on-one. And then even when I have that conversation one-on-one, that person often doesn't take enough notes, forgets what it is, versus now they have it permanently recorded.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you said you feel your firm is indestructible, I think maybe, and I don't want to rephrase what you said, but I'm just going to use it in other words that I would use
Yeah.
when when I'm working with other firms. It's very strongly positioned. A very strongly positioned means that you come from a place of authority, and it doesn't matter what the clients want or don't want. If you don't work that way, you can just simply say, "We don't work that way," and then you have very little fear of losing the client. And if you lose client, you have very little fear of not having one already ready to sort of in line to replace them. Is that kind of what you meant?
Yeah, yeah. It's the inflow. I don't have to pay a ton for inflow, right? So knowing exactly, like a client yells at me, even earlier, I like stopped thinking about it. I'm like, you just have to get rid of them, but it's even less painful now, right? Someone's rude, someone's inconsiderate, someone yells at my staff. A person maybe is trying to have us do something that's like not even something we do. We can just say no, not think about it. And then I always know that there's multiple people lined up to whom I can actually help even more.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think most accountants or accounting firms have, like you said, probably more business that they can handle. So their mindset is, well, I don't need marketing. I don't need marketing. I don't need new clients. But the reality is clients either turn sour or they're situational things that you don't control that makes it very difficult to recover from. And the client just needs to change to a new, like that change is just important. Like they need to change to a new professional. They might need a new fresh face. And it's not personal. It's just time for change, I guess.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you allow that to flow freely rather than feel that you're stuck having to do things that you don't want to do. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll work with accountants, and that's really the classic mistake. And none of us is immune to it. As you grow your firm, even we have the next thing we need to be saying no to. But that's exactly it. I'll see a lot of accounting firms, I think, don't do well because they're not good at saying no. And so as you get bigger, it's like you need to say no to more things. And that's why everyone's like, well, my accountant doesn't communicate with me. My accountant doesn't pick up the phone and talk to me. Well, your accountant is drowning in work that they should have said no to. And so that's where exactly I feel like even more comfortable to just say no. And then so I can service my current clients the best. And so that I'm specifically working with people to where I have a lot of experience in that area, right? So there's certain cases where I'm very comfortable, do it all the time. I want to take those in because I'm in a great position to serve that person. There's other stuff where people are asking me to do things that are like, I don't, I'd have to look it up. I'm not really comfortable or haven't reviewed it recently, to where I just feel like even more comfortable just saying, here's a referral.
Right. I mean, saying no to a client doesn't always mean you're getting rid of them. You're just saying that's a particular area that I won't do. Like and you're a tax attorney. That means you have at least credentially you have even more in-depth knowledge about tax and a standard CPA like I am.
Mhm.
So you would be you could argue you could even be more tempted to answer every tax question. You know what I mean? Like like you almost in a position where the client says, well, you are the source of all tax knowledge to me. So if I ask you a tax question about something that you know nothing about, and this is a normal thing. I've been to doctors that the doctor says, I don't do that. You gotta go see another type of doctor. But I find that in accounting, we haven't mastered that. The I don't do that. You have to see another type of accountant. And we just go down that rabbit hole and try to get the answer. And probably mostly because we ourselves are curious. Like we get asked a question, we get stumped, and we're like, you know what? That's a good question. And I want to go down the rabbit hole and answer that question. The problem is that, like you said, we go down that route. Maybe it will be very satisfactory for us to like find the answer and give the answer, but we probably neglected to help 10 clients on the stuff that we do really well. And those clients come back and say things like, oh, my accountant doesn't answer the phone or whatever, because it's having that domino effect on the treatment that we give to the rest of our clients, because we're either trying to satisfy one client or satisfy our own curiosity to help that one client question. So how do you manage that?
I mean, I've gotten comfortable saying no, but yeah, because even with being a tax attorney, it's not just tax questions people will come to me for, right? A lot of times people are like, oh, well, you're an attorney, right? So you do all of these other things. And it's like, could I do those things? Probably, but then I'd be kind of mediocre at everything if I start just doing a ton of different things all at the same time. So yeah, I mean, I literally, I just try to find good referrals and other good people. To where also if I have a good resource, sometimes it's maybe I am comfortable taking the case. If I just knew a little piece of information, I would know that what I think might be a big deal is actually irrelevant, right? I may think there's some level of international compliance that's actually not even there. So if I just have a great resource to immediately go to and ask, they're either going to tell me, okay, yeah, this is a bigger thing, just refer it over. Or, you know what, there's actually no compliance. You don't need to worry about it. Go ahead and take on the case. And so I try to find, honestly, it's like a lot of it is literally finding great people and resources around me.
So you find that building a competence around building a network of specialists, it is part of the value you bring to your clients. So it's like your clients need to see the fact that they're not only hiring a great professional, but a great professional with a great expansive network, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like, what is my goal, right? It is literally to leave the person I'm with better off. And so for everything, I quite literally think like, if this was me, what would I want? And so even though a client may not like to hear, no, I can't do that for me. If they were me, like if I was them, sorry, well, like, what would I think? Would I want that person to go ahead and just like rip the Band-Aid and just tell me like, I can't do it? And a lot of times it's, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to give you as much attention on this. This is something that's pretty straightforward, pretty easy, that a lot of people can handle. You don't need a tax attorney for this. And you may just you're going to value the time and attention more than you're actually valuing the expertise. Well, then that may not be me. You know, you may want to find someone that's going to handhold you through the right thing. So I just find the right person. I try to connect them. And then I also have to be careful because whenever we refer, it's like a reflection of our brand. So sometimes I do try to be a little careful or give someone a few options because I don't have full control over like how that person handles the case.
Yeah, of course. And one thing I tell you, one thing I love about referring is when that other person has a podcast, has a blog, has a YouTube channel, because you can always say, hey, try it before you buy it type of stuff. And a lot of professionals don't have that. I would say 99.99999% of professionals don't have that. So they need to rely on your word, the one that already has a good reputation with the client, of saying, don't worry, I know this person, they have been vetted. And we as professionals are so afraid of doing that. But when the other person has a YouTube channel or a podcast or whatever, you can say, check out his or her content. And, you know, if it matches, you know, your style or whatever, then it'll probably work out really well. Doesn't it make it much easier to refer to another professional if they have that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've talked with a lot of accountants and it kills me every day. They don't do the videos. And then I see them sink in tons of money into expensive marketing agencies that couldn't care less about them. And it's just, to me, it's like silly. It's literally like if you go to a networking event and you met two people, that is a one-time benefit. Two people now know what you're like. And you know what? We all have bad memories. So they're also going to forget what you're like and forget and not understand you as well as if you just had it online. Exactly. And so people know, like, they see the things I'm most passionate about from my videos. They see the things I care the most about from what I'm saying. So then they know they're able to better qualify if they're a better fit coming in.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception that especially CPAs for the most part is because the personality profile of the CPA typically is the one that wants to be in the office working by themselves. Like that's why they became a CPA. Otherwise, they would have gone to marketing or something like that, right? Is that they, a lot of them, the ones that I talk to anyway, they say stuff like, well, I don't look good on camera, or I don't like the way I sound on a microphone, or I'm not good at creating content. And I think the biggest challenge is that because it's labeled as content, and they've already in their mind, they say, oh, I am not in that category. I'm not a content creator. I'm not going to do that. I'll do something else. Yeah. But I think what they fail to see is that if you're a knowledge professional, if you're a knowledge worker, that means that people are paying you for your knowledge, not because of your looks or not because of your position or not because of the equipment or the building that you have. People are simply hiring you because what's inside your brain. The only way they can qualify how good that could be is to get a little bit of a sample of, right? You know, think about all the times that you walk in the mall and somebody offers you a free sample of a frozen yogurt or a free sample of the orange chicken or whatever. And it does increase the probabilities of you buying it. So creating a podcast, a video, a blog article, it's almost like that free sample that people need to taste before they buy. Like, how would you try to reframe that to help our fellow accountants like change that mindset and go out there and share some of your content?
I mean, I have a couple comments on that. So first off, I mean, it's just like when someone gets to know you, right? So like when I get on the phone with someone, when that accountant gets on the phone with someone, it's not like they're hiding who they are at that point. So it literally makes no sense for them to hide it. Like, it's not different on a video. It is literally the same thing on a phone call or on that initial Zoom call when they're intaking a client. Like, a client gets to know you at that point. All you're doing is just meeting them a little bit earlier where you don't have to spend the extra time. And so if you're not embarrassed to get on that initial client phone call, then you shouldn't be embarrassed to just put the video out there and let them see it a little bit sooner and let them see you actually talk about things that you care about versus having, a 30, 45-minute phone conversation when half the time now you're having to introduce them to yourself. They don't know anything about you. Even if they were referred, they come in and they're like, who is this person? All I know is that one person likes this person. And so today, like when people come to me and they're a referral off of one person versus actually coming in from social media, the people from social media know me better. They trust me more. And rightly so, because they've watched me talk for hours and hours and hours, not, heard from one person that they kind of sort of liked working with me, And so it is literally the number one, like most critical thing. If I had obviously I do it today for a reason. That's a reason I spend most of my time there, a lot of my time there. And it's because it's so critical to growing a firm. And I actually think, like, to me, it's actually an obligation. Like, you have to do it because, and this is kind of how I viewed it, where the people that are doing the most social don't know what they're doing when it comes to tax and accounting, right? And that's not a coincidence. It's because they, a lot of times, aren't good. They haven't spent years practicing. They don't enjoy being behind the desk. So the first thing they do is say, well, wait a second, you're telling me I could post some completely unknowledgeable random fact that I made up on the internet about tax and go get a ton of clients and thousands of dollars, or I could sit here behind a desk trying to actually learn what to do. Which one sounds more appealing to someone that is not like a true bred accountant, which is typically just like, let me just go post some stuff. Because the minute they add tax to the title, they get so many more views. And that's why I also think I'm seeing all of these influencers that didn't even have an interest in tax, like have no background. Maybe they're like a life insurance salesman, and they realized when they posted about life insurance, they got no views. But when they posted about tax, it blew up. And so then to me, it's like an accountant not doing it is literally putting people at a disservice. Like every day that I don't post more content, I see people sign up for people that I think are literally there to scam them, don't care about them, charging them insane numbers for things that are pretty straightforward, and they're overselling what they're even doing in the first place, and they leave them holding the bag anyways. And so, yeah, an accountant, like people can tell when you're bullshitting them. That's my opinion. And especially when they have two people to compare it against. So when they see this like fancy marketer person who really doesn't know what they're doing, but it's like lots of video edits and cuts and all of that. And then they see the most boring accountant. You can be the most boring accountant. You can be, maybe you feel like you don't look good, you don't sound good, but you're saying something that just makes a lot of sense. People can tell and can compare the two, but then it's like not fair when you're not giving them that comparison. All they have to go off of is like fancy editing. They tend to think that person's really qualified.
And you're absolutely right. And this concept of fancy editing, I think what it actually means is just get the sequence of words that would fit into a 1 minute short that sounds and feels sexy and appealing. And like you said, most of the time, look, I'm going to play a quick clip of one of your videos. And of course, needless to say, everybody listening to this or watching, you got to subscribe to Jasmine's channel. Let's help her get to 1 million subscribers, which she will. I'll be the first one publicly to say that I would say within a year or less, you'll get to 1 million. I almost guarantee it. I see the trend. I think you're doing a great job. But these edits are meant to just be clickbait. That's the term, is clickbait. And I don't know if necessarily they're trying to do tax work, because a lot of these people are not even like offering tax work. They're just randomly talking about hearsay tax advice because, like you said, it just gives them more clicks and it increases their socials or whatever. So not necessarily people that are actually selling you tax-related work. They're just talking willy-nilly about tax. So this might be an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And for the audio only people, I'll put links to this below. But I'm going to play one of the videos. Give me a second here. I'm going to play one of the videos, and I feel this is probably the first video that kind of went viral. I believe this one has like 1 million views, and it's somewhere around early April. And early April is when your channel started really blowing up. So I think this video is perfect to share. So I'm going to play this real quick, and then we'll comment and break this down.
The more money you make, the more the IRS will take. So if you go from making $75,000 to $150,000, you're not going to see $75,000 divided by 12 on your paycheck. As a matter of fact, I know people who get a raise from $100,000 on their job to $200,000, and they've actually seen less on their check, because the more money you make, the more tax brackets you enter into. I did not think that when you grow in life that you make more money and get less. That just didn't seem fair to me.
So she's dead wrong. When you make more, the tax brackets are progressive. So what that means is the dollars inside of the lower tax bracket are still taxed at that lower bracket. It's only the dollars above into that next bracket that actually get taxed at that next bracket. It's a misconception to think that now that you've entered that higher tax bracket, all of those dollars are taxed at the higher bracket. That is not correct. So for more accurate tax advice from a tax attorney, subscribe.
Okay. So, could you repeat that ending? Can you still do it? For more accurate tax. Yeah, can you do that really quick? Because I know you gotten really good at saying that on the shorter and shorter. So could you do that as fast as you can?
Yeah. For more accurate tax advice from a tax attorney, subscribe.
Yeah. So, I've been watching a couple of your videos, and like, for example, that one was probably, let's say, twice as long as how you do it now. Obviously, you're trying to squeeze in the most amount of content. But one thing I love is that you figured out that having a consistent ending like that is the hook. Like most people's hooks start at the beginning. Your hook is actually at the end. You start with the video that went viral, right? The random person talking about random tax advice. And if you're watching the video version of this, those are the cuts that she's talking about. You see like the jaggedy of the video gets jagged, because they're basically shortening, and they're making what sounds like a single sentence from probably a 5-minute conversation. And by the way, this person was dead wrong. You're right. Just the logic wasn't working. But in some of these videos, maybe the full version of the video is actually giving the right advice. It's just when it's cut down to that 90 seconds or 60 seconds, then it comes off wrong. So you started with she's dead wrong, and I've seen you say other things, expletive words, like that's BS or that sort of thing. And I love the fact that you're also experimenting with different ways to react to stuff. This is the first video you have that went viral with 1 million views. So let's break it down for me in terms of what were you thinking when you built this video and why you think has been so successful.
I mean, when I was doing these videos, I definitely wasn't thinking it was going to go to 1 million or go viral or anything. I would watch videos on tax, because I'm also on social media, and I'd be like, this is wrong. Like, am I the only one that thinks this is so wrong? And what's funny about that video is actually, I mean, there's a lot of people in the comments that I think part of the reason it blew up is because of the engagement, because actually there was a lot of disagreement. A lot of people were still just very convinced that I was dead wrong. And so, I mean, you can't convince everyone. You just have to give them the information. But to me, it just became like, there was a period of time where it's a limiting belief, but you think, okay, well, maybe people just don't want the right answer. Like maybe they just actually want to hear the answer that is wrong, but sounds better. But I think it's just a limiting belief, because the reality is that's the only thing that people are putting out there, because typically the people that are comfortable putting themselves out there just actually don't know too much. And so I was trying to now bridge this gap where it's like, I'm going to try to make this also interesting and entertaining, where it's worth watching, but actually give accurate information.
Absolutely. And do you think part of the problem also is that the 60-second attention span that we have too? Because, for example, this lady said, the more money you make, the more you get taxed. Just technically not wrong. The problem is the way the video is edited. The context is, if you get a raise, your net paycheck might be smaller because you've magically entered into a tax bracket that somehow encompasses your the income under that bracket, and just people just don't understand how brackets work. Even she said you enter more brackets. Like you even used brackets as a singular term, as if this all these things that come out you, like all these brackets are coming out you. So obviously a misunderstanding of the math, and that's a different issue. Like you said, she's not a tax expert. I don't even know who she is. I don't think you even know who she is. She's a random lady talking about your paycheck being smaller when you get a raise, which makes zero sense. But how do you think the attention span plays into this issue?
I mean, we definitely have shorter attention spans. I had been doing, content for the last 2 years, trying to do longer videos initially, thinking, just thinking that would be more helpful. Not that there's not a way to do those. I do think some other people do them successfully, but it was when I was able to really switch to the shorts that I think the message was able to resonate better. And it's just, a lot of people who probably wouldn't sit there and listen to tax, maybe don't have a current tax problem. I'm still able to reach them and kind of educate, so that if or when something does pop up, they know to look at my channel and learn more.
And you would say that in your world, from your perspective, your success comes from the shorter videos, right? From the shorts, not from the long videos?
Right. For the YouTube. Yeah. For YouTube. Absolutely. I mean, it was way slower. It was really just since this year where I switched. I had been doing some shorts, but they were more just, I'm a tax attorney, right? I'm still figuring out things like the lighting and the audio and all these things. But it was really when I switched to the format of watching the bad tax advice and then giving my response, and a lot of times what is more accurate, that's when it took off. And I think that makes sense because probably it's a little bit more entertaining, and then it's also more in context. So if I just say something like, hey, your daily makeup use is not deductible, it's just not that exciting. It's like, well, of course it's not. Someone's watching it. But then if someone realizes, wait, people are saying that it is, and I'm now telling them that it's not, it's just a little bit more interesting that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you would you be surprised to hear that in my case is the opposite? My video with the most views, it's almost 2 hours long. Like the only video I have that's almost 2 million views is a 2 hour long video. So it's a the point I want to make is there isn't a single formula for this. Like some stuff works for certain creators and some stuff works for other creators. And your longer videos, and when I say longer, I'm talking about maybe 8 or 9 minutes, they just don't perform as well as the shorts.
Yeah. I also think, I mean, those were from like a longer time ago too. So I am probably going to experiment with some longer form that's just done better. And one thing I was thinking about working on, I mean, again, it goes back to like what can actually help people. I think I've been thinking about working through some actual case studies with people. So like actually just someone with an actual IRS problem, like how do I go about this? A lot of times they have a crazy story of things that they've gone through and they've been scammed out of so much money and so many issues. So, I mean, I think there's different ways to do it. It's also like, how do we come across, yeah, so there's definitely not one formula. And it's like, it's literally taken experimentation to get to something that I felt really worked for me.
If you remind me asking, you're talking about tax cases. So is that like tax resolution work? Like what kind of work you're doing that you think is most interesting in terms of unique cases?
I think both. So one would be IRS problems. Absolutely. There's an entire industry built to take advantage of people in those situations. And I think there's almost nothing online of real practical like example, you know what I mean? Like when I search online IRS tax resolution stuff, a lot of times I'm just getting like blanket, you may qualify for settlement, you know, you could do an installment agreement, but it's not really situationally based. So what I'm planning to do is walk through specific cases and how I go through it so that when someone then gets on the phone with a total scammer, they have some background or foundation to be able to qualify and say, okay, is this person just like making stuff up, or are they actually genuine? And then I'm also planning to walk through probably for business owners. A lot of business owners, you know, they get into business, they're good at sales, but then all of the accounting and tax goes by the wayside. And so a lot of business owners are set up in a way that's not optimal. Where I think I add a lot of value is bridging between different areas. So it's hard to find someone that, you know, one person might know how to do a tax return, but then they don't know how to tax plan. They may know how to tax plan and do tax returns, but then they don't know how to solve an IRS notice. So I found a unique place for me, especially when it bridges the three. And so that's where I was trying to work through cases like that, where a person comes in, you know what, I got these IRS notices and then my accountant told me to do this. And then I ran into this other issue and then my books are messed up. I went under audit. So being able to figure out what's the best way for them to approach their case.
Yeah, I love that idea. Let's do a 60-second clip that we can edit out and maybe make a short.
Mm-hmm.
Jasmine, what is an offer in compromise?
An offer in compromise. You want me to like do as if I'm doing a short right now?
let's just assume that I could edit afterwards. So I'm not editing this part. I'm just this part of the conversation. What I'm saying is, and this is why it's difficult to like nail it in 60 seconds. But enough, like when you were saying people are getting scammed on tax resolution work, essentially what they're offering is an offer in compromise. And I think at least understanding the term and then knowing how to start the research, I think is the best tool for anyone with tax trouble for them to get started. So Jasmine, what is an offer in compromise?
Well, so there's actually 3 types of offers with the IRS, right? The one most people refer to is offer in compromise doubt as to collectability, saying, hey, IRS, I can't afford this. And so you have to meet IRS standards, them believing you can't afford it. Okay. The second type is you're saying, hey, this is not a correct tax for me to owe. And the third type is saying, hey, this is not fair because I have medical bills. I have certain things that even though I can afford to pay it, you might be killing me by me having to pay you that money.
Oh, that's perfect. So one of them is, hey, I'm insolvent. Okay. And the IRS is never going to collect this money. And because the IRS has a statute of limitations, I believe is 10 years. Is that what it is? Statute of limitations. They might be better off to make a business decision. And it's funny kind of saying this because the IRS is not supposed to be a business, for them to make a business decision to take some form of the payment, take a percentage of it, and that's what a form offering compromise. That's the first one. The second one is when you believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, where the IRS took a wrong position. Like you're literally like appealing the issue and saying, hey, either your position was wrong or this tax doesn't apply to me for XYZ reason. And this is why you need an actual attorney, not a CPA, because you have somebody literally fighting in tax court for the case. And the last one says, look, I do have some money to pay, but there's special personal circumstances that affect me, and it has an undue burden on my life, on my family. Therefore, we could do some sort of negotiation. Would you say that's a good rewarding of them?
Yeah, that's perfect. And whenever you hear those ads for like pennies on the dollar, they're always referring to that first one, right? So they're always referring to, but that means you have to actually not be able to afford to pay it. And the problem is they will advertise to everyone, obviously saying we'll settle for pennies out of the dollar. So they're basically taking out of context. If you're sitting on, a $200,000 retirement account, some equity in your home, and you only owe $30K, guess what? The IRS, whether you think you can't afford it, the IRS says you can.
Yeah, and I would love to have you back to deep dive on that stuff, because I think that stuff is very, very, very interesting and very important for people to know. If what would be like the best resource for people to get started to understand their options when it comes to that stuff?
I mean, I direct people to my YouTube. Maybe that sounds silly, but it's like a lot of times, if you call a bunch of companies, they're not really going to educate you typically. They're really just there to say, hey, just pay me $1,000 and we'll take a look. If you look online at blog articles, right? Blog articles are always written for SEO. So half the time they say things that don't even make sense, and they're always vague enough to not be helpful. So really, I would literally say my YouTube. And then, I'm taking questions. They can apply to be on my podcast. Like I'm trying to do like lots of free help for people. So especially if you don't even know, like just the other day, I had someone over where, he'd already spent like $20,000 trying to fix his problem. And, it's like, okay, let me literally just tell you what the plan is. Let me go over it. Look at your transcripts. So that's a good one. They should always start by pulling their transcripts. And then at that point, it's, trying to get a little bit of assistance to figure out, what are my next steps?
Now, what do you mean apply to be on your podcast? Could you expand on that? That sounded interesting.
Yeah, I've got an application right now. It's on my Instagram under my highlights, but I literally have an application where they can just apply to be on the podcast. And I'm trying to take people that, their situation would most help other people. So I am trying to take things that aren't like too simple or too straightforward to where they should just, hire an accountant, but more like they don't know who to trust. They've got a real problem going on, and which is just, it's so common. So yeah, they can apply. And then I'm basically picking people, and ideally right now I'm doing in person in Dallas. And then I'm literally just solving their case. Like, how would I go through it? How am I thinking about it? What would the next steps be? And then for anyone that's actually on the podcast, I'm like giving them way more stuff as they want to go ahead and solve it on their own. I'm giving them enough tools to where that's a likely scenario. Obviously, there's some situations where it's so high stakes with hundreds of thousands or millions in tax to where they probably should still hire someone, but especially if it's a lower tax number due, I'm not holding anything back as far as information. I've got a full program, but access to me where they can still ask me questions even after leaving the podcast.
Okay, so let's break this down. So if you have a tax issue, you've gone to someone else, or you don't trust who you've gone to, Jasmine is currently building out a library of content with real live cases, and she's offering what normally would be $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 worth of advice to sit down with you and kind of listen through the case. And if she had all the facts and circumstances in front of her, she would be sort of live solving the issue and telling them the path to getting it solved, or the options that the taxpayer has. So as long as the taxpayer wants to be public about their situation, which you are in turn giving them free advice, but then using that information for content so you can help more people, and then maybe possibly get actual business out of it. If somebody wants to hire your firm to go through the representation, that's what you're currently doing now while you have capacity, correct?
Yes. And I'm also going to do it for business owners. I haven't yet held one of those, but same thing. I'm trying to find people. Typically, maybe they have an IRS issue, but they've also got maybe accounting, tax planning issues. My goal is to do the same thing, where it's a holistic review. How would I approach it if this was literally my business?
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that so much. In the name of the community, we appreciate that so much. Jasmine, what are you doing with other accountants? Because you were telling me that some accountants are watching your, which is really interesting, right? Because some accountants started watching your content.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, they disagree or engage in a chat conversation, which actually makes it really interesting. But in other cases, they're accountants, actual CPAs, bookkeepers, tax preparers are coming to you with tax advice. So what did you pivot to that, or is this like another business that you have? Can you tell us what you're doing with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's separate. I mean, everything to me, like, I don't want to be unfocused. Everything, I always figure out, like, what are my goals, right? I love tax law. I love learning tax law. I love teaching tax law. And so I've kind of built out different things that are in line with that. And one of them is, yeah, teaching it to accountants, because that's also another great way to impact people, where I can tell people great advice on YouTube all day long, but a lot of times they still just need someone to implement it. And, our firm only has so much capacity at any given time. And so what's a better way to make an impact? Also to teach other accountants how to do it. And so I do have like a group of accountants. It's still pretty close knit. And I teach them everything I do. So to me, it's like, I don't hold anything back. Like, anything I'm doing in my firm, not to say nothing's secret or it's taken me a long time to build, but it's just one of those things. The hardest part about everything I do is actually just the doing of it. So that's a high enough barrier to entry to where I don't feel like it's a good idea to still just like share everything. So that's what I do with the accountants. I teach them through firm, like how to run their firm, how to sell to clients, how to market, like build trust online, how to tax plan. We teach tax resolution. So we go through everything. We don't actually teach bookkeeping itself too much. We teach more like how to delegate the bookkeeping to other people. So maybe that's one area I do a little bit less, just because I think there's already a lot of that on the market. So I was really trying to fill something that I uniquely am most qualified to do. And I think it's really, again, it just goes back to bridging different areas, right? So there's so many different things you can buy that'll just teach you this one little piece, or just that one little piece. And it's typically taught by someone who doesn't run that big of a firm, or who isn't even a CPA. And so I think it goes back to, people in my position tend to just not do this, like not teach accountants, because they don't need to. Like, I don't need to, right? I'm literally doing it because it's fun. And we try to find ways that, like, what are the things I can do that I enjoy the most, that I'm really good at? And that was one of them. I just love working with accountants, and I've made so many mistakes over the years. Even though I'm still young, like, I started just very early. And so I made all of the same mistakes, right? Where you take in clients that are rude, you take in clients who compare you to TurboTax and tell you kind of like suck, who, don't pay you properly. So it's taken me a long time to get to this journey of building a firm where I'm better off, where my clients are better off. And so I'm just like expediting that for other people.
Yeah. And as a former young person myself, too, I could tell you that sometimes it's tough when we are young or look young, and I don't call it competitors, but the other people in our field that are seen as experts have a lot more gray hair. Look, 10 years is a lot, 10 years is a lot. And then you started early, because you said you took your enroll agent exam when you were in high school. So, for you, it's almost 15 years. And, I think sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that age somehow is the only determiner of experience. And yes, of course, age is experience, but when it's focused experience, you can multiply that. It can have a multiple versus people that are generalists. Like, you do tax and tax only. It's like you never did audit. You do have a bookkeeping firm, but you're not like, figuring out ways to do bookkeeping faster. You're always focused on the tax law portion. So when people go and hire you, whether it's 10 or 15 years of experience, focused experience is double or triple the average. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that, because I'm telling you, I also may look young, even though I'm 43. but I've had really deep focused experience in the world of QuickBooks. So, it doesn't matter if somebody's been using it for 30. I teach people that have been using it for 30 years. Put it to you that way.
Yeah.
What's the name of that program? Sorry, go ahead, respond.
Very good. So the name it's called Tax Leverage for Accountants. I was just going to say, the thing I'm literally most passionate about is learning. And that's where I always look out for that in anybody I work with. And I think it's basically what you're saying, right? It's like focused. If someone doesn't, like whenever I look to motivations, right? If someone puts money first and everything else, like learning, all these other things second, they just don't do as well, right? They stagnate because you hit the money goal without having to do too much a lot of times. And then I've seen a lot of practitioners, it's like 30 years of just doing the same thing. 30 years of just repetitive action, not innovating, especially in the tax world, is just, you are probably worse than if someone hired someone 1 year out a lot of times. Like that's what I see a lot of times where people have done the same wrong thing for 30 years. And so my entire premise of everything is literally learning. Whatever I'm doing, if I'm hiring an employee, does that person have an interest and ability to learn? If I'm finding a vendor in an area that takes skill, does that person have an interest and an ability in learning? And that's where I think people get these outsized returns on their time, because they care so much about getting better that it compounds and compounds and compounds. And by the time they're still half the age of someone else, and it's like, it's indestructible. You look at them, you're like, how did you find all this stuff? But you just made yourself a little bit better every day.
Yeah, and it has a cumulative effect too. You think about like great return on your money would be what, 10%? When you learn a new skill, you get a lot more than 10% back if you truly think about it. Like the difference between being a tax preparer and then being an enrolled agent in terms of the money-making opportunity is tremendous. Like an unenrolled tax preparer can do tax returns and that's it. An enrolled agent can, call the IRS on your behalf. It has more credibility, probably knows more because you have to take the exam. And then once you become a CPA, it sort of multiplies. And then obviously now that you're a tax attorney, it multiplies and multiplies. Follow-up question to that before we end here. Are you charging by the hour or are you a flat fee pricing? I would love to know what your pricing philosophy is. I know you have multiple firms and it might vary across the firm, but how are you charging for your work?
So I don't typically do hourly. I don't want to say I have no projects that are set up hourly, but I really try not to, because the reality is nobody cares how long it takes. I don't care how long it takes. The client definitely doesn't care how long it takes. They just want a certain result. So I always try to just give a fixed fee based on scope. That's typically my philosophy. People like meeting expectations is really important. Quite literally, so saying you're going to do one thing and then just doing that thing is already like blowing it out of the water. And so I view that same thing with pricing, where if you can just quote something and stick with it, a lot of times, like clients won't say it this way, but a lot of times they would also just rather pay a little bit more and just have the certainty that it's not going to be some random hourly bill that because you sent lots of emails and you had to talk with your colleague and all this like inner workings of your firm that they could care less about. So that's my philosophy. That's what I teach the accountants, is like, how do we price the scope? And you know what? There is some risk that you may lose a little money. And then if that happens, maybe you need to increase your prices. Maybe you need to improve your firm, right? There are things that you can do to control how much time the project is taking. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so we're 100% aligned there. Thank you for that. Let's do one more clip here, just to kind of have fun here and encourage people to check out your YouTube channel, and then we'll finish commenting that and we'll wrap it up. So let me play one of these videos here.
I need a nice car sometimes with enough space to be able to do car-themed OF videos. It's a business expense. You can do anything. If you use it in a video, it's a tax expense.
Have you met with CPAs to confirm all
yes.
this? Okay.
I go to the barn and visit my horses on stream, and then everything horse-related is also a tax expense.
So nothing about what she just said is correct, which shouldn't be surprising since she's on OnlyFans and she's not a tax professional. I don't believe she's met with a CPA on this, because the IRS and Congress the way the law is written, it cares about where you are driving your vehicle, the actual mileage and business purpose behind that. It is not based on what you do in your car while it is parked. And for more accurate tax advice from a tax attorney, subscribe.
I also got grilled on this video.
What did you get grilled on, if I
I
don't mind
think
me
people
asking?
were all of a sudden, because I mean, I can only put so much in 60 seconds. So lots of people were like, what about a professional movie studio? And they like buy a prop, and they were just like extrapolating from that. My point obviously was the fact that just because you put it in a video doesn't make it deductible. Like, we're still looking to the full business use, which typically for a car, like if you're going to buy a car, you're almost certainly driving it. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. But there is a famous tax case on props.
Yeah.
Have you heard about this one? It's the one with, okay. So I may butcher a little bit, but I think it's worth looking into. And once I find the case, I'll put it in the description. Is I think a strip club dancer got a breast augmentation, and she got a lot of breast augmentation, like excessive. And the prop was, they were the biggest breasts in the world, or the area, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why she was getting business. Now, what's interesting here is that she was reporting her income, which makes it even more interesting, because that's an industry that typically doesn't report that much income. But I believe she won the that tax case, because
So actually, I do know what you're talking about.
okay.
I have a separate video on it that hasn't yet come out.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, because I reacted to someone else saying like what he had said was, we just don't know if it's deductible because no court case has talked about it yet. And so I did look that up, because that was a 1994 case. And first off, it was a summary court opinion. So what that means is we can't rely on it. So it's actually not precedent we can rely on. But yeah, the reason it worked, that was more under the like, when people do anything personally for health reasons, to the physical appearance, it's basically always non-deductible. And that was some very unique exception where the rule was like, it was basically not beneficial for personal use. It was so focused on business that it couldn't be used personally. And she had testified in the court case where she was like, if I could take them out every single day, I would, because it's actually a detriment to me personally.
Yeah, I think it's important. We're looking forward to watching that video. It's important because a lot of my clients tell me, oh, I need makeup and hair because I need to look presentable and professional, because I'm a realtor and I work with high-end clients or whatever. Or the Botox. Yeah, of course, you have to look, younger or peppy or whatever, because of the type of clients I deal with. So it's an answer to that. And I think it's important. Again, a 60-second video cannot cover all that nuance. So Jasmine, please mention your websites, everything you're doing. I'm going to tell everybody, subscribe to her YouTube channel at the very least, but tell us how people can find you and contact you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the best way to look at my content, obviously, it's at Tax Leverage for YouTube, at Tax Leverage JD for Instagram, and our website is taxleverage.com, and that's where you could actually book if you think that, there's something we can help you with.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.